I was like refreshing TikTok over and over again. Like, why isn't it showing you live? What's going
So
on?
good.
Ah,
Yes, we're so excited too. I'm
heck
so
yeah.
hyped that you came back. So,
Yeah. Thanks for
yeah,
being here, buddy.
we are gonna just wait a few minutes for a few
Yeah.
people to jump on. Um,
My wife asked
Shadow
if
in
I
the
had anything
chat.
planned tonight.
Yeah,
Nice. Nice, dude. That's awesome.
that's amazing.
I
Oh, we
love it.
appreciate you so much. And we don't know how long this one's gonna be. We're gonna kind of play it by ear, see how
Hmm.
everyone feels after like chapter 2 and 3, because it's about 20 pages. So, um, thanks for the likes, guys.
Yeah. Going good, Brandon
So
Myers. How are you?
we did post a recap on
Hmm.
YouTube, on both of our separate YouTubes. Mine's linked in my bio. I'm not sure. Is yours linked in your bio as well?
I think so. I'll have to double check. Sure. Let's go with yes.
Yeah. Well, at least it will be eventually.
Sure.
And then for anyone who hasn't been on our lives before, we are reading Into the Dark. Do,
There
do,
it
do,
is.
do. So we've only actually read the prologue in chapter
Hmm.
1. So that was last time. We're still kind of figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so the last kind of well, I guess it was prologue and chapter, we were introduced to basically everybody.
Hmm.
And Geode was like my fave. I love him so much.
They met Geode, the Rock, the
And was
real Rock, the
the Rock,
actual Rock.
not not Dwayne,
No,
just the real Rock,
the
Geode.
Rock. Yeah.
Who's your favorite character so far? I know that you've read it, so you can't really like.
Um,
It's hard, but
I like Leox.
yeah,
I do. I
yeah,
don't know why, but because he's totally not me. Like he's super chill. He is like everything. He lets everything just kind of fly by. There's something about that I really dig about his character that things just don't seem to bother him. So he's almost like the anti Han Solo. Like,
I love
and I
that.
don't mean
Yeah,
that in a negative way. Like he's just
no,
he's like the not the opposite, but the inverse of Han Solo. Like he's
yeah.
chill. He's low key. We'll just figure it out. It's gonna be all right.
But you almost kind of need that with everyone's like nerves
True.
going crazy, because we kind of
Yeah.
noticed that like everyone's starting to feel like a little bit anxious, and like
Hmm.
they're not showing it, most people,
Right.
but you know.
Oh no, they're all well. When we heard the sort of a little bit of dialogue, like inner dialogue from each of the characters, um, Comac, um, who else? Jorah, not Jorah. We heard Jorah earlier, but she's not there. Sorry, my chair is stuck in a crack in my floor.
Problems.
Um, anyway, the people we heard from, we heard their own inner discussions, and it was like their inner thoughts, and they're all anxious, like anxious in their own sort of ways, which I really dig because it human. I don't like using the term human because there's not just humans in Star Wars, but it humanizes them for us as readers. Like, oh, I can connect with what you're going through because I get that. Like, I do get that.
Yeah, I love that too. I love that we're seeing a different side of the Jedi too, because like we always just think of Jedi as like stoic and nothing ruffles their feathers unless they're like going to the dark side. But you
Hmm.
know, it's like this, we're seeing like the real, again, humanization of
Hmm.
Jedi, which I love that.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally dig that too. Hey,
Hi,
Juniper, how you
Juniper.
doing?
Look at us. We're on the same. We're trying to do it at the same time without, we're like using the force telepathically. Okay, so we have a few people watching, but
Yeah,
why don't we get into it?
let's do it. We are on chapter two for anyone. Just a reminder for everybody: Into the Dark, chapter two, and we're gonna focus on getting through chapter two and three tonight. TJ just mentioned that a minute ago, and we'll see how it goes. You want to get started this time? Oh, yes. Oh, I
Yeah.
found it. Oh, where did I put it? Dang it. Hang on. I found
This
it.
is so great. This
There.
is from a tattooer. Yeah, there's our little bookmarks. Dude, it's so
I love it.
great. All right, you want me to start or you want to start?
Go for it. Yeah, you can start.
Okay, again, be patient and be kind because we're just learning how to do this. So we're rough, we're smoothing out the wrinkles. So we're only human. All right. The makeshift bunks aboard the vessel weren't luxurious, but then again, neither were the Padawan's quarters in the temple. Reese noted the small cot, the thin partitions, and the bare bones, fresher without complaint. nor, oh, I totally, Reese noted. Okay, sorry. Nor could he complain about the vessel itself. All right, its crew was eccentric, and maybe it was more ramshackle than the average ship that landed on Coruscant. However, the engines hummed along nicely. The internal temperature remained within a range comfortable for humans and most near-human species. The Jedi had plenty of room to relax, either in solitude or with others in the mess. Was there any information center? Of course he's asking that. Oh, Reef, we love you. Any way to access histories or fiction? Of course not. It would be silly to expect anything like that on a small transport. But Reef noted it anyway. As the first sign of the deprivations he'd no doubt face on the frontier. Probably it was better to go ahead and get his sulking done now before he made it to Master Jorah and had work to do. Reef still had hopes of changing her mind, but he would rule out the faint possibility before he even started if he'd showed up at Starlight at anything less than his best. So he wasn't in the mood for company. However, he was in the mood to eat, as usual. Growing as fast as he was, 12 centimeters in the past year alone, sometimes it seemed as if it were physically impossible to stuff in as much food as he actually needed. If anyone knows a teenager, they know that that's a true thing. Mm-hmm. To Reed's relief, the vessel's mess was completely silent. He could have privacy and lunch. Under his breath, he muttered, "The best of both." God. At the far end of the mess stood Geode. My guy! Had he moved from the cockpit? Had Leox and Affy moved him? Did he walk or crawl or roll or teleport? Reed squinted at the rock, trying to determine whether the being was friendly, irritated, or even awake. He tried and failed. "Sorry," Reed began. You startled me there." Geode made no response. Reed felt silly for even expecting one. "Oh, hey," said Alfie Hollow, as she trooped into the mess. "So how do you like her? The vessel, I mean."
She's perfect for what we need. The word perfect made Affy's face light up like a Naboo lantern. I love this ship. It's my favorite in the whole fleet. What fleet? The Buying Guild, she said, opening up a packet of pale pink powder and tapping it into a small bowl. Scover Buying is the owner, and she says she's grooming me to help take over someday. If I take on just a little more responsibility, she'll give me a ship of my own. I just know it. And I'd pick the vessel. Reith silently downgraded his thoughts about the size and influence of the Buying Guild. The vessel was serviceable, sure, but if this was the pick of the fleet, he had questions about that fleet. His expression must have betrayed his thoughts too clearly because Affy laughed. Scover doesn't get why this is my favorite either. But I feel like certain ships, they have an energy, you know? Maybe even a little bit of soul. The vessel has more of a soul than any ship I've encountered, and that's why I wanted to travel the galaxy in it. I understand that, Reith offered. Maybe the ship grew on you after a while. It does have personality. Affy stirred a little water in the bowl, and the pinkish powder puffed up into a sticky bun. We recognize that. That's Rey in The Force Awakens when she stirs the powder and yep, love it. Tell me what the Jedi are in 2 sentences or less. For the first time in what felt like days, Wraith smiled. Those 2 sentences might be pretty long.
Hi, Warhead. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Warhead. How you doing?
"We've got nothing but hyperspace and time." She settled herself into a chair and took a big bite of the sticky bun.
Can I pause for a second? Just for like a quick sec. Yeah. When I'm hearing her voice in my head as you're saying it or I'm saying it, I'm picturing, like, she's only a little bit older than Reith, and Reith is sort of like, it's like watching one of those high school drama TV shows where all the high school students seem like they're 28 and 30-year-olds. Somehow high schoolers actually talk like that. And so like he's talking like he's so in his inner monologue so mature, and she's talking like she's super mature. And I can see her just like, oh, it's totally cool, but like, I can almost see that, like, I'm not putting her down at all, but it makes me feel like this interaction of that like the high school, like the Riverdale type TV show or whatever.
Yeah, like she's like, but we've got like nothing but hyperspace and time. Like that's Kind of like a rally girl, you know? Like
Exactly, but I don't mean that like, yeah, but like not in a bad way. Like the two of them believe everything in their lives is just so critical, and they really believe that. I'm like, I love that for them.
yeah, it's so great.
Okay,
I
sorry, go
I
ahead.
read it in my head like that too, but I didn't want to read it out loud because I was like, that would sound a little
You
crazy.
totally should. You totally should.
Oh God. Okay, I'll try, but we'll see what
Okay.
happens. We've got like nothing but hyperspace and time. She settled herself into the chair and took a big bite of the sticky bun, through which she mumbled, "Ready for this, Geode?" Geode said nothing and did nothing. Of course. Reed sighed. Best begin at the absolute beginning. Do you know what the force is? Effie gave him a withering look. Everybody knows what, like, the force is. Come on. All right. He held up his hands in mock surrender. Sorry, just making sure. So the Jedi and Force users are united in our quest to understand the mysteries of the Force, and to serve as guardians of peace and justice throughout the galaxy. I've, like, heard of Force users before, but, like, why does that make you monks? I still have one sentence to go. We ground ourselves into a spiritual existence and give up individual attachments in order to focus entirely on greater concerns. Effie chewed thoughtfully on her sticky bun for a moment before saying, so, like, that means, like, no sex? Should he give her Master Dro's whole speech about the difference between celibacy of the body and true purity of the heart? It was a very long speech. Reith decided to skip it. Basically, she nodded. Definitely monks.
She just got right to it too. Wait, so no
Yeah.
sex? Is that what you mean?
So, like,
It's like,
no, like,
oh
sex?
god, okay, hold on. Now see that I just don't get. Leox said later. Oh, hold on. Yeah, no, that's right. Okay, there was a break. I'm
Yeah,
like, wait, why, how do we skip?
there's a break, so it's
There's
there's one of these fancy little.
little,
Oh, you can't see. Yeah, there we go.
yeah, the little thing that you made into our logo. That thing.
Okay, but you have to do Effie's voice like that too now.
I'm
For
gonna
the
try. I will try. All right. So I'm gonna try to do Leox. I'll try to come up with a good Leox. I'm gonna channel like Tommy Chong or something while I'm
okay,
doing this. All
okay.
right. Now, see that I just don't get. Leox said later when Affy and Geode tried to explain the Jedi to him. How are you supposed to prove love to the galaxy at large if you don't know how to love any one individual person? Affy shrugged as she double-checked their readings. The wavering blue light of hyperspace glinted off of every bit of metal in the cockpit, making it look beautifully electrified. Even Geode sparkled slightly. She said, you don't have to have sex with someone to love them. You should know that if anyone does. Indeed, I do. But other things seem to value copulation as a form of bonding. Leoxin made a face and swore. Not appropriate, sorry. He meant well, she knew, but Affy hated it when he treated her like a kid instead of as an equal. Fortunately, he didn't do it that much. It's okay. I think I've I think I heard of sex once already. That made Leox laugh. Just make sure your mom knows I'm not the first person who talked to you about it. Every time someone described Scover Vine as Affy's mom, it warmed her through. You know, it would be easy to get Scover to like you. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong voice. You know, it would be easy to get Scover to like you more if you just wear the guild coverall once in a while. Up with that, I cannot put. Leox shook his head. A man's got to have standards, and since I lack the financial wherewithal to declare my independence from the guild, my personhood must be asserted sartorially. In other words, you can take my beads from my cold, dead body. Do you want to go to the break, or
Yeah, you just
you?
go to the break. Yeah.
All right. Affy suppressed a smile. You
I
know, the
also
Jedi
just
would.
wanted to. I also just wanted to hear you do Effie's voice again.
Okay. I'm struggling to pick whose voice at the right time. I messed
I
up there a
know it's
minute ago.
hard.
It's too far.
Yeah.
Okay. Get back into character. All
And scene.
right. Affy suppressed a smile. You know, the Jedi would probably say you're putting too much emphasis on worldly things. My relationship to the metaphysical is my own to judge a little bit. Don't call me that.
A little bit. She calls
But
her.
he
Or he calls her a little
he
bit.
does. He calls her a little bit.
Okay. Cormac Vetus was a man of reason and logic. While he did not deny he possessed emotions, he never allowed them to cloud his judgment, or so he hoped. His precise oh my goodness, his precise mathematical mind, that is a tongue twister, preferred the tangible to the nebulous, the quantifiable to the mysterious. More than one of his fellow Jedi had pointed out that this was an unusual frame of mind for a mystic. However, that was part of what Comac felt he brought to the Order, steadiness and rationality. So why did the mindset now feel less like a gift and more like a defense? Because you were traveling to the place where you first learned that the harm that arises from imprecision, from emotion, all that was born between Iram and Iranoa?
Irem and Arano.
Iram and Irano.
And I only know this well because in the phase 2 of the High Republic, the one of the early books is the Battle of Jeddah, and that's comes alongside Iron. They say those words a lot. So a
Well,
lot.
I'm glad because I would have
You'd be like
butchered that
words,
regardless.
man. You'd be like
Yeah,
words.
words are
Words.
hard. Yeah. Okay, Iram and Iranoa?
Arano.
Arano.
Yep.
Okay. All that was born between Iram and Irano. For a moment he was back in the caverns, Orla shivering at his side, staring in fear at the shapes in the frigid dark. Comac shook his head, as though he could physically rid it of his memory.
The best way to get out of the mind was to exercise the body. Options were limited on a ship that size, but a brisk walk through the corridors would do. He made his way through the vessel, hoping for privacy. The hope was in vain, as he almost immediately came across Des, wrapped in conversation with Reese Silas. I mean, Reese was saying, "Would you call us monks?" "Not exactly," Des said. "I see you haven't been able to talk Master Geode out of the Padawan braid." "No such luck." Reese gestured vaguely at the back of his head. In olden days, the braid had been mandatory, at least among apprentices from species that grew hair on their heads. These days, not every master required them. Comac had no intention of doing so. Had no intention of doing so if he ever took another Padawan. Master Joramali clearly felt otherwise. Comac intended to absent himself, but before he drew away, Reith turned to him. "Excuse me, Master Vitus? May I ask how you go about discovering and recording new legends? As a folklorist, I mean. Just find the local wise woman, ask for a story?" "Sometimes," Comac gazed out of one of the vessel's very few small windows at the brilliant, eerie blue of hyperspace. "Often it is more complicated. There are always the stories people want to tell about themselves, and then there are the other stories, the secret ones, the dark ones, the ones whose meaning are more difficult to comprehend. Those aren't the ones they offer to outsiders. Of course, those are generally the most important of all."
Those are the stories they would have done the most good. Those are the stories that would have done the most good between Iram and Iranoa.
Iram
Iram,
and Arano.
Arano. Iram, Arano. I have to make up a song in my head to remember
Say it like
that.
3 times. Say them like each like 3 times and you'll get it.
Iram, Arano. Iram, Arano. Okay,
See, there you
that's
go.
let me rewind that so I don't look so stupid. Okay.
You're like, and cut. Let's MC. We'll try that again.
Yes, okay. They were the stories that would have done the most good between Iram and Irano. Yeah?
Good enough.
Oh my god, I did it wrong. That's what I meant.
Arano.
Arano. Aaron, Iram. Okay.
Think Arano.
Sorry,
Like
guys.
AIR. Arano.
Arano. And then Iram. I just take the E off. Okay.
Just take the E off on that.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, you got it.
I'm just gonna skip them all. I just skip when it comes
You
to
say the E's. We're just gonna say the E's.
places, you know. Des grinned as he set about restrapping his boots. How do you get them to open up about those? It varies, Comac said. There are species who respect the outsiders, who push them hard, demand the facts. There are also species who eat outsiders like that. It's best not to pry until you know which kind of culture you're dealing with. While you're waiting, he shrugged, you study their art. Paintings, tapestries, literature, symbolism, and allegory can reveal a lot. Then you ask about the art, and the legends come up naturally. Crafty, said Reeve, but also ingenious. Thank you, Coleman inclined his head. Des said, that's got to be a challenge for you, doing something completely new, to go off the map. Literally, Reeve joked. Comac said that he had been to the area of... Comac could have said that he'd been to the area of space before, specifically to the lost moon between the twin planets that served as hosts for the new starlight beacon. But there was no need to speak of it, and Comac had learned to limit his words. It was far too easy to say too much.
Mm-hmm. In the cockpit of the vessel, Leox Gyasi chewed on a spice stick and considered the Navicomputer readings. The spice stick was legal in Republic space, for now, mostly because they hadn't had time to get around to outlawing everything yet. Maybe the sticks would make the cut and remain legal, but maybe not. Leox had laid away a stash just in case. Odyssey signs of other traffic, he mused. Clearer signs than this. Are the readouts blurry? If so, why? Geode, buddy, Leox said. You seeing what I'm seeing? Geode's ominous silence told the whole story. Clearly. Something was genuinely wrong with the hyperspace traffic. Deeply wrong. The few traffic patterns he could make out were moving in directions that didn't make any sense. Leox muttered, not liking this. Not liking it at all. The ship was still moving forward under no more than the usual stresses, so they might as well keep going. The problem might be local, he figured. Something they'd fly right by. Let's see. Okay.
Do you want me to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Orla hoped to...
Turn that off.
What is that?
No.
Can you hear that? Can you guys hear that? I can hear somebody else's live. I think. One sec, guys. There was just some like weird interference. I don't know what's happening. Could you guys hear that? Or was it just us? Right? I think maybe try.
There we go. No.
Okay.
No. My son, I went and checked my Bluetooth. My son put his headphones on, but they connected to my phone. And so he's in the house. I mean, he's not next to me. He's in the house. But I went and I'm like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden I looked over and then I realized I have another Bluetooth device connected. It's like, dang it. Okay, sorry.
It was so strange. I was like,
yep.
Uh-oh, I don't know what's happening.
My kid, seriously.
No.
It is totally my 7-year-old. Only a 7-year-old would be able to do that and not actually know what they're doing.
It's fine. It doesn't work. It's just we had a little break for you guys. That's all. We just wanted to solve the mystery and we did it. Good job. Go team. Yay.
Yay.
Okay. Orla hoped to spend the least part of their voyage to the Starlit Beacon talking with the vessel's crew. She had been buying a ship of her own, something she'd never done before. As much as she studied specs and models, she still thought there might be valuable tips to glean from people who spent their whole lives navigating the stars. Some Jedi fell into the trap of thinking non-Jedi did not have anything to teach them. Orla, however, always remembered that every single being in the galaxy knew at least one thing that she didn't. Alfie Hollow seemed the likelier candidate for the conversation, Orla decided. If only because Alfie seemed to have a greater commitment to sobriety. Well, we like spice apparently. That's fine.
Yes.
Okay. Yet, Orla found herself putting off that chat. Actually, talking about purchasing her ship would mean that talking about her decision to be a wayseeker. As little as Alfie knew about the Jedi, she surely would ask the most obvious question. Why? At the moment, Orla didn't feel confident of her answer. She could simply say instinct. That was true, but unlikely to satisfy Affy's curiosity. It was more likely to pique it. Or she might say, the Jedi Order and I no longer see eye to eye. Also true. Also likely to get her in trouble if anyone from the Council ever heard of it. Probably the best answer would be, I needed to come to know the Force in a deeper, even more meaningful sense. Also true. And both long and dull enough to discourage further questions. Wayseeker, her mind had whispered. And there she was, walking away from the Order to navigate an unknown region of the galaxy all by herself. Hoping that out there she would find purpose her recent missions had lacked. Am I deluding myself? She muttered as she stood in the mess making herself some Chandrilan tea. If I can't find the answers at the temple, what makes me think I could find them out here? What would my master say if she could see me?
Then she paused, hoping no one had overheard that. Probably not, but on a ship so small, you could never be certain. She resolved to keep her musings internal for the duration of the voyage. Orla took a moment to center herself, but found she couldn't. The energies on the ship were being muddled, or were becoming muddled, even frenzied. Orla murmured, "What's happening?" That was when Leox Gassie's voice came over the ship's comms. "Everybody who wants to stay alive, strap yourselves in now." That's not ominous at all. Reith ran for the jump seats, reaching them just as all the other Jedi scrambled in. As they hurriedly fastened their safety harness straps, Orla called out, "What's happening?" Leox answered, "Near as I can figure, hyperspace is broken." Not a thing you'd hope to hear very often.
God, no.
What? Des looked as bewildered as Reith felt. How was that possible? Tons of debris, the kind of thing you will usually never find in hyperspace. It's all over hyperspace. The spice stick gripped between Leox's teeth was getting a grinding, as in littering every route out there. Reith could barely put the thoughts into words, but that would mean a disaster on a galactic scale. That's pretty much the size of it, Leox said. Now everybody hang on.
I love this book so far. So that was chapter 2.
Yes. And so what's interesting is you asked me the last time we did this about how it coincides with the other books, and what we just encountered in this book was a snippet of what happens in Light of the Jedi. So at the beginning of Light of the Jedi, spoilers for everybody, plug your ears if you haven't read it, that the Great Hyperspace Disaster with like debris and stuff in hyperspace that's shooting out at all kinds of different places, that's what they're encountering right here. So this is basically happening at the same exact time as Light of the Jedi. And so they get out of hyperspace, obviously, here in a minute, or else there wouldn't be much of a book. And then shenanigans ensue.
Shenanigans. I'm glad I don't have to read that word. Oh, God. It's like, I say it, I don't know if I said it last live, but like, I'm actually so terrible at reading out loud. So this is what is going to make me better. But shenanigans is not one I want to read out loud.
Right. So what about the book so far are you really enjoying? If you could pick one thing.
I like that it's taking everybody's perspective on things, but it's not confusing. And I'm pretty smart, but like Light of the Jedi was just all over the place, and it was a lot of history. It was a lot of like backstory. And normally I like that, but it was just so jumpy. Whereas this, I'm like, it's really easy to follow. It's comical. It's like relatable also. It's not just like the space wizards and you can't relate to that, you know? So I really like it.
Nice. And I like your comment about the space wizard stuff. It's something that's come up on my other show a few times where I like the humanity, especially in the High Republic. I really love the humanity behind the stories. Like, yes, in this case, we're dealing with a lot of Jedi, but the things that they're talking about with the Jedi have nothing really to do with Jedi and everything to do just with people. Yes, they happen to be the Jedi, but they haven't done any of the space wizardy things yet. They're just humans or people dealing with people things that they deal with.
Well, and I feel like too, if it's easy to put yourself in a Jedi's shoes with this, because you're like, I probably feel that way too, or you know, you find a character that you kind of relate with. Geode. No, just kidding.
Right?
I don't with Geode. But yeah, I don't know. And let us know in the comments what you guys think too. You're not a book reader, but I'm so totally into this now. Oh, that's awesome. Well, now you can read it with us. And then you'll have to read Light of the Jedi too. And then that's what happened with me is like I wasn't super into like EU stuff. And then I read a few like the Padme books and I was like, I'm obsessed now. And now I have to read all the time. That's unfortunate.
Thoughts on Jar Jar? That will be a different show. We'll have to get to that later because that'll just take a long time to talk. Yes. But so long, I won't do the spoiler thing. But if you haven't seen the latest episode of The Mandalorian, go watch it because it'll make you happy.
It'll make you cry because if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, it's not even what happens.
No, it's not about what happens at all.
It's the real person that makes
it made me very happy. I had to pause it and go, "Aw."
I was crying. Paul looked over and I was like, like it was.
You're sitting there, you're like watching the show. Much. I can see you like sitting there watching the show. Your husband's next to you. You're like, I'm not crying. You're crying, and he's like,
no, I'm not crying. I'm just sweating. It's really dusty in here. What? My allergies. Oh
no. Right. Oh my god. Okay. Okay. So I wrapped that one up. You got the next one?
Yeah, I can start.
Okay. Go for it. Chapter 3, by the way, everybody. Chapter 3 of Into the Dark.
Affy had seen a lot more than most 17-year-olds. Had boarded and served as a crew on ships traveling the length of the sector, now across the galaxy, all the way from Canerla? Canerla?
Sure.
Canerla
Yeah, that works.
to Coruscant. Had helped steer a ship through hyperspace vortex once, but she had never seen Leox so close to losing his nerve. His hands remained fixed on the controls as he attempted to hold steady. So, she said, what do we do now? We try and check whether our path is clear. Leox would have looked almost relaxed to anyone who didn't know him as well as Affy did. Only she and Geode could really detect the tension coiled inside. If we get hit by so much of a splinter of metal, we're looking at an explosive ejection from hyperspace, followed by your favorite and mine, a hull breach. Hull breach. Every space traveler's worst nightmare. A breach meant being blown out into the frigid void of space, which would kill you within 2 or 3 minutes. Within only seconds if you had any breath in your lungs, which would immediately expand and burst. Even worse, the electric blue of hyperspace was changing color, shifting more violet all the way to red. Affy had no idea what was happening, but it couldn't be good. The Navi computer began blinking fast, sending staccato crimson light across the bridge. We're picking up debris, she managed to report. Something huge. Leox said what she was really thinking. That thing's got a bullseye on us. Can we evade? We're gonna find out. Steering in hyperspace was no mean feat. Generally, there was no need to do so since the Navi computer calculated and modified the jump at inhuman speeds. Today was an exception. Experienced pilots formed a kind of intuition about hyperspace, an instinct that worked better than any droid or machinery. Leox had better instincts than any other pilot Affy had encountered. He could save them if anyone could. She just wished she didn't know how big an if that was.
All right. Hang on! Leox's voice rang through the shuddering vessel. Reith, who was already hanging on as tightly as possible, felt his gut drop. The other Jedi maintained their calm, or seemed to, but Reith could only manage the appearance of it, not the reality. His jittery mind kept talking. We should have held out for a bigger ship, or a better ship, or a bigger ship, or a ship with more credible crew, or basically any ship except this one. Wham! A bone-shaking jolt struck the ship, jarring Reith so hard he jerked against his safety straps and bit his tongue. Strange vibrations began rippling through the vessel, more ominous than the crash had been. Was their ship about to fall apart? Over the intercom came Leox's voice, lazy as ever. Okay, so there's good news and bad news. Master Comac and Orla shared a glance, which Reith caught out of the corner of his eye. He wasn't the only one having doubts. The good news is that instead of space debris smashing into so much as scrap metal, it only winged us, Leox continued. The bad news, as the astute among you have already perceived, it's that we've taken some damage. Affy's going to go check that out. Already Affy was dashing past the jump seats, catching herself against the wall every time the ship lurched in a new direction, as it did constantly. Des said, does anyone here have any expertise in Starcraft affairs?
I literally can Juniper just said poor Reith. I can imagine him just like having an internal crisis right now. He's like, see, told you so, shouldn't be here. You should be in the library. The archives.
If we were just in the archives, reading a holocron or a book right now, things would be fine. Why am I here? All I think is the line, I think Dante from Clerks. I'm not even supposed to be here today. That's all I can think.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Oh my gosh.
So the last line was Des asking if anyone has expertise. I just finished the basic course, Reith said, then waited for the other Jedi to chime in with their superior knowledge. Nobody did. Your experience is more recent than any of ours, then, Master Comac said. See if you can help. He winced as if in pain, but nothing more. Thinking that he might be the repair expert on board was almost unnerving to Reith as the collision had been. But he immediately unfastened his straps and followed Affy. The ship lurched from side to side. Reith stumbled into one wall and then another, but managed to stay on his feet until he got to the ladder that led below decks. He grabbed the rungs firmly before venturing a foot down. "What are you waiting for?" Affie called. "Hurry!" Reese let go of caution and of the ladder, dropping down into the inner workings of the ship. Affie was already hip-deep in machinery, tools in hand, and he asked, "What's going on?" Then he saw for himself what was going on, which was that the coaxium regulator had come completely unhitched from its station. Affie grabbed the regulator with her bare hands, which were already turning blue with the severe cold. Shaking and trembling, she was managing to hold the regulator in place, directing its cool beam of energy into the engines where it belonged. If she lost her grip, the beam would slide sideways and tear the vessel in two. Affie didn't look up. "We also need someone to reset the regulator station, if you think you can manage it."
Reef grabbed a tool packet and jumped down into the workings beside her. "I can do it, but if you'd rather I held the regulator while you did the repairs, no. If the ship lurches during handoff, we're done for." Affie shivered from the cold but kept hanging on. "Just be quick about it, okay?" He worked as fast as he could, welding the station frame firmly enough that the worst turbulence shouldn't shake it. The ship continued bucking and shaking, and once Affie seemed on the verge of losing her balance, Reith reached out with the force to steady her as best he could. He didn't have the finesse necessary to hold the regulator exactly in place, but he could keep her upright. "Whoa," Affie said. "What is that? Is that a third hand or something?" "It's the force."
Okay.
Serious?
Whoa. I thought that was going in a
That
different
wasn't
direction.
intended to be a spicy
God.
situation, but I think it got a little spicy.
It's not spicy. It's just the force, guys. It's just the force.
Totally. Right. No, totally innocent. It's fine. It's totally fine. They're just kids. It's fine. "Seriously? You can feel it?" She laughed out loud with surprise and maybe even delight. "You're not a monk. You're a wizard." "Yes, monk wizards. That's us." Reith checked what he'd done. It looked right, but a more experienced eye was called for. "Are you able to see my work? Do we have it?" Affie glanced over her shoulder. "Yeah, that should do it. Help me lift this." Reef put his hands on the regulator too and nearly cried out. It was freezing, so much so he could feel stabbing pain in every bone of his arms. Affie had to be in agony.
But she did no more than wince as they carefully pushed it upward. The metallic click of the regulator snapping back into position was one of the best sounds he had ever heard. Groaning, Affie stumbled back from the machinery. Her hands remained blue and blisters had formed on her palm. "A stim stabilizer?" she gasped. "The med pack's in that orange emergency box." Reith had it before she could finish talking. Quickly, he pressed it to her neck until he heard the hiss click of the medication being dispensed. In only seconds, her hands began to return to their normal color and the blisters flaked away. "Great," he said. "We made it." "We're not out of this yet," Affie said, already shaking off the earlier pain. She climbed the ladder. What do you mean? More repairs?" Reith looked around for any signs of further damage, but nothing seemed apparent. "Please think about this. Something in hyperspace hit us, and I thought I saw..." Her voice trailed off as she dashed back towards the bridge. "If we had to get hit, I wish it would have been by anything else. Any damn rock out there in space," Leoc said. "No offense." Geode's ambient silence indicated no mistaken. Affie hurried into the cockpit, breathless. Are we all right?"
"We are for now. Good job on the repairs, by the way. The kid monk helped me, but that freighter, Leox, that looked like a fragment of a passenger craft." Leox sighed. So much for breaking it to her gently. "Yeah, it was. There would have been hundreds of people aboard, maybe even thousands." Her face was stricken. Moments like these reminded him how young Affie really was. "Horrible way to die," Leox agreed. "Might as well hit her with all of it up front, even if she still was a kid. Even if she was still a kid, she could handle the truth better than she would any lie. Listen, I can't be sure, but going over the readouts, that looked a hell of a lot like the wreckage of the Legacy run to me." Affie's dark eyes widened. "But the Legacy run is a bind guild ship. Scover travels on it sometimes." "I didn't say it was the Legacy run. They're similar, maybe not the same. You ought to brace yourself, all right?" She nodded, already attempting to focus herself back on the matters at hand, despite the Febrile?
You're on your own on that one.
Yeah. All right. Febrile. I'm going with that. That's what we're saying. The
Febrile? Yeah.
Febrile
Okay.
reddish light of disturbed hyperspace all around them. His heart went out to her. Not every girl could throw herself into her work when she just found out her mama might have died. Scover's fine. Scover's absolutely fine. Affy repeated this to herself as she settled back into the co-pilot seat. Scoverbine rarely traveled on guild runs. She preferred to remain on their hub planets, overseeing their fleet in its entirety.
She hadn't mentioned any recent plans to do otherwise, so Affy refused to panic. Even if Scover wasn't on board, and she wasn't, the destruction of the Legacy run was bad enough. The Republic's arrival in their sector had been shipping to feverish levels of activity. Everyone wanted to move cargo before it could be taxed, tariffed, or outlawed. Settlers wanted to reach the frontier badly and paid for transport by the thousands every single day. Every ship went packed out with as much living and inert freight as it possibly could contain. Even the vessel had traveled to Coruscant with so many crates of denta beans that Geode hadn't been able to get through the corridors. Any loss would be a major loss. In the Legacy run, there would have been hundreds of families on board, thousands of people, even small children. The ship's still acting weird, she said, both to snap herself out of worrying and because it was true. That's because hyperspace is still acting weird, though. Now, I think it's got more to do with the freighter wreck throwing absolutely everything out of whack. I mean, look at all this. Leox gestured at the readings. Debris is flying all over hyperspace. Navicomputers shutting down lanes faster than we can count them. He shook his head. We're changing course. Affy went cold, as though the coaxium regulator had been dropped back into her arms. In hyperspace?
Yeah, I know. And don't even start, Geode. Thing is, we got to drop out of hyperspace as fast as possible. We can't do that and get where we're going. So now we're going someplace else, hopefully someplace safe. She braced herself as preset coordinates began scrolling down the nav screen. Whatever preset would get them into real space fastest was their new destination. She'd have to trust that the vessel wouldn't be pre-programmed with coordinates that led to, say, the center of a dwarf star. The final preset clicked. The final preset clicked in. Leoc said, Kid Monk, back in his jump seat yet? If not, Affy said, it's on him. By the way, he's actually a wizard. Leoc raised his eyebrows as though to say, not bad. Hang on, he called out over the intercom, and then they were in real space. No bounce, no jostling. As sweet a re-entry as anybody could hope for. Affy and Leoc shared a grin as she called, Good pick, Geode. Now we can figure out what the hell went wrong out there. And then Leoc said, and then we can get on our way. Relief washed over Affy as she looked out at the largely empty sector of space surrounding them. They weren't facing hostile ships or intruding into a war zone or anywhere near the heart of a star. They were pretty much nowhere. Despite the giddiness of their escape, she couldn't help wondering, why would the ship be programmed to take us here?
What happened? Orla whispered. Her white face had gone even paler. The voices crying out. How many have died? Master Colmac said. You felt it. 2, Reith? Reith had sensed something was terribly wrong, far beyond the vessel itself, and that it was tied to the disaster. But he felt nothing like the shock reflected in both Orla and Master Colmac's expressions. It occurred to him for the first time there might be certain advantages to not being as acutely force-sensitive as the average Jedi. Can you tell us what happened exactly? Unsurprisingly, Master Colmac pulled himself together first. No, we should contact Starlight Beacon immediately. We need to find more information, and we wouldn't want our delayed project. Reith agreed. Well, mostly he agreed. A small, unworthy part of him wanted Master Jorah to feel a little alarmed, just enough to make her stay. You know, the frontier is a needlessly dangerous place for us to be. We should return to Coruscant right away. Still.
Oh, that kid.
He rose and went with Master Colmac to the vessel's comm station. It was unlikely that Colmac would need help sending their messages, but it was the role of a Padawan to be prepared to offer assistance to any Jedi at any moment. The comm station was a small area with a curved ceiling hardly big enough for even one adult humanoid.
Two were already crammed inside, Leox and Affy, the former of whom was holding an amp unit to his ear. Apparently Geode was alone on the bridge, which Reef didn't find reassuring. Master Comac knelt at the door as smoothly as though that was what he'd prepared to do all along, and said, "I realize your ship has urgent communications to make, Captain Gassi, but..." Leox held with one hand. "Hang on." If Master Comac felt impatience, he showed no sign, merely nodded. But Reeves could sense tension building within Leox and Affy, a tension that was catching. He blurted out, "What's wrong?" "Everything," from the sound of it. Leox put down the amp unit and flipped a switch, projecting it into the room instead. Immediately they were inundated with noise, more than a dozen signals trying to break through at once, overlapping and blurring one another. "Lost all power. Stranded in the Bestman system. Signaling my craft within. At least 1,000 souls lost, possibly more. Littered with the stuff, like someone mined hyperspace. Can't even begin to assess the damage until we get through." "What sector are those messages coming from?" Master Comac asked quietly. Affy's expression was grim. "All of them."
No, it's so sad.
It is.
So many fragmented truth, Master Coleman said. No complete picture, which of course would be more frightening than the whole truth could ever be. "We hope," Affy retorted. Orla appeared in the doorway behind Reese and murmured, "Any news?" He whispered back, "It sounds like this is going to be a pretty epic disaster. Many people have already been killed." Killed. The word was so final, so absolute. Reese suddenly felt ashamed to be unhappy about his frontier assignment, to have been unhappy about his future when so many beings had already lost their futures entirely. Then there was a new transmission that came through, louder than the rest. "All hyperspace lanes should be considered closed until further notice. For travelers beyond the boundaries of the Republic, through to the Outer Rim, we reiterate that hyperspace is currently unnavigatable and extremely hazardous. All traffic is advised that hyperspace travel should be avoided at all costs." Well, that's that. Leox shut the transmissions off. "You heard the lady. Looks like we're going to be sticking around here for a while." "Where is here?" Reith asked. Affy replied, "Pretty much nowhere." They were in a near-empty corner of space, unable to either move forward or get back home. For now, and for an unknowable amount of time to come, they were stranded.
"Listen," Leox said, "sure, we can look at this as being marooned in deep space. But when you think about it, it's all just space, really." Reith was uncomforted. He went to the bridge, which at least felt potentially useful, and for one moment was alone with Geode, who still stood at the navigator station. Reith began, "Hi, this is terrible." "Huh?" "Please," Affy whispered as she entered the bridge just after him. "Don't try to talk to him about it yet. Geode's incredibly sensitive."
I love him so much.
I was waiting for that.
I
He's
love him.
sensitive.
He's
He's
just such
feeling
a
his feels right now. Just give him some space.
no, he's just
"Of
a
course,"
quiet,
Reith
sensitive
said,
guy.
"but I thought you said he was a wild man." Leox, who was passing by, interjected, He is a capricious nature, one of many moods and climes." After that, and a fond glance at Geode, he continued on his way. Reith studied Geode for a few seconds, wondering what exactly he was missing, because it was just a big rock sitting there. Affy settled into the co-pilot seat, apparently to kill time, but then frowned at a blinking sensor. "What's that? Is it more damage to the ship? Something else we need to repair?" Reith was only beginning to realize how badly he needed something to do to make him feel less helpless. Affy shook her head. "It's a beacon, a signal beacon. Not an actual message, but an indicator from a ship nearby that needs help."
Nearby? Reese asked. How near does that mean? Within the system, reachable by sublight, Affy said slowly. We're not alone. Somebody's out there. Don't answer, Orla called. She's been walking by the bridge, apparently, but halted at their words. You don't know who's out there. Her gaze had gone distant. You never know.
Ugh,
Dun, dun.
it's not ominous at all. Whew.
So now there's a new part. So we'll wait probably next time because
Yeah,
there's a
let's do
part
that one
one
next time
this
because I
time.
this goes back 25 years to when Orla and Comac were Padawans together. Ooh,
Oh,
yeah.
cool.
So, okay. So, my question for you is this, and it's an observation I have, but other than Geode, other than Geode, we'll come back to Geode. Other than Geode, how, how are you feeling about like, how in depth they're going with descriptions of hyperspace? And it's probably a bit geeky, but it's it it caught me by surprise every time I read this book, or when I read this book and some of the other ones, is they spend in the High Republic, they spend a lot more time talking about the nuances of hyperspace, like more so than any other time. Like they don't it's almost taken for granted in the other Star Wars books we've ever read. In this, it's still being explored and it's still being understood and all that.
Yeah, and from reading Light of the Jedi, I know a little bit more than like the average person who hasn't, but like the fact that we're seeing it change, and I think Juniper said like, "Oh, haven't we seen it change color in
Yeah.
animated series?" And I can't remember, but that it makes it seem so much more real because we know that like you can well, this gets really nerdy, but like if
Mhm.
they have looked at like traveling through black holes and that's like technically what hyperspace would be, but this is like coordinates and stuff. Like I really enjoy this without it getting too wordy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like we're reading a Neil Stevenson book or something like that, where he's going to spend one whole page describing all the nuance of something before moving forward. It gives you enough to be like something is happening. You can connect an emotion to it, but you don't get lost in the nuance of trying to describe something just for the sake of describing it.
Yeah, and it's not we get like little bits and pieces, which I really, really like. So it's hi Fate. Hi
Hey,
Sarah.
Fate.
But it's nice because like I again like hearing everybody's personalities is like been my favorite part is
Hmm.
because like you're getting enough of everybody and you can almost come up with their like voices in your head and everything that they're doing and you can see their personalities really start to shine in like these moments of like chaos
Hmm.
essentially with like the great disaster and all that stuff. It's like even Orla's like, don't answer, don't answer. So she, you can tell she's like a little more cautious and she's like pretty smart. But then Reith is like, he's a little nerdy and sweet and like kind of innocent, and you just adore him. And
Yeah.
he's like fun and outgoing, and I really like it.
It's interesting because we think of the Jedi so often in our experiences as like having all of these experiences, even the Padawans or whatever. But you realize in this book very quickly that Affy and Leox and Geode, even Geode, they have, even though Affy is not that much older than Reeth, she's had a lot more experiences. She's been around like the actual galaxy itself. So like compared to Reeth and even some of the Jedi, like she's almost more well traveled, and these things don't seem to bother her as much, which probably also helps that she's around Leox too, because he's got that such a chill way of being that rubs off on you after a while.
Well, and it's like seasoned. She's seasoned. Like, you know, there's some people who have never left their hometown, and
Right.
there's some people that have traveled the entire world by the time they're 17, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like, and they're a lot more adaptable, I think.
Mhm.
And as people, they're not as like shocked by certain things, and so that's why she can handle the things at 17, like fixing the coaxium. Like any other 17-year-old would be like, God, what am I doing? You
Like,
know?
what the heck is happening? We're all gonna
Yeah.
die.
Somebody
Yeah.
help me! Oh my God! Yeah,
She's like, just get the thing done. Let's move on. I
yeah.
really like too how we're seeing like Orla is in the High Republic. She's one of my two favorite characters in the High Republic. Orla Doreni and from the comics, Keeve Trennis is just a complete badass, and I love her. Her master, by the way, Keeve Trennis' master is a Trandoshan, the only Trandoshan Jedi. Yeah, his name is Skier. He's the only Trandoshan Jedi. He's a badass. Anyway, I love Orla because I love that we get to meet this. I didn't actually. I read a bunch of the comics that came out when these were publishing that first year. Into the Dark didn't come out until after a few of the comics came out, so I actually got introduced to Orla from the comics before this book came out. But I can see how people reading this book would not, like in this case, may not know who she is. So
I
getting
didn't.
introduced to the idea of a way seeker in this, hey, so much life, it's good to see you. Getting introduced to the idea of a way seeker here is really cool because she's not trying to overcomplicate the explanation, but you get enough to understand what she's probably doing. But I also love that in the comics, she seems like a rock. She's there and she knows what she's doing and how she's engaging. But in this, you even still, like you said earlier, you still get the sense that she is just another person who's got her own insecurities, and she's dealing. And even though she made the decision to be a way seeker, she's not like, and I made the decision, and it's just
Yeah.
sold.
Yeah.
It's she's not sure.
No, and it's like she didn't want to say anything because she's like, well, I don't really know the answer yet. So, and I could like,
Right.
I think we've all been in a time in our life where we're like that, where we're like, okay, I want to do this. I don't know exactly why, but I know I need to do this,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. And so, like, she doesn't want to rep it, but it almost seems like the way seeker is kind of like she's playing it as like it's looked down upon in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so she could fear judgment or like, it's really essentially.
It kind of, but they explain it more in some of the comics, and I think in some of the other books we get to learn about it a little bit more. Actually, we definitely do. It's in which book is it? Um, is it Rising Storm? I think it's in Rising Storm.
So we will find out more.
Yeah, I think in Rising Storm or the other adult novels. Hold on, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's in this book, which is the second of the adult novels, comes after Light of the Jedi. There is an interaction that happens between two of the Jedi, Orla and somebody else, where she actually is going to help mentor one of the other main characters in all of these stories. And she acts as a mentor, and she very much is a mentor to this person. Somebody you think would be very prominent in their own right, but this person steps in. She is very wise. She like sees things in such a different way, and it kind of reinforces the idea of this way seeker, where it's not that she completely distanced herself from the Jedi Council. She just realized, oh, thank you, Fallen Star, that she just realized that there's another path for her. The Force is calling her in a different way, and
Yeah.
some of them just go different places and just like let the Force feels like they're calling them somewhere. So she just follows where the Force is going to go to whatever that is. It could be helping a small village. It could be fighting a battle. It's just whatever it
Yeah.
just kind of like flowing with the Force wherever it takes her.
Yeah. Warhead said, being ex-military, I can definitely identify with Orla, and I can see that parallel, like somebody fighting for their country, and then like, but they just feel called in a different way. It doesn't discredit the things that they did
Right.
before as a Jedi or ex-military, but it's like they just are being called in a different way. And
Right.
I think
It's
that's
your
really,
next step. Yeah, it's the
yeah,
next step in your journey. And I really do love that in the High Republic, what we get to see is that there are different steps that everyone can take. And while the Wayseeker may not be the one that they tell everyone, oh, you can just be a Wayseeker. It's just another thing, join the Jedi, become a
yeah,
Wayseeker. It's not like the encouraged path. We get to see all these different paths that they can all take. And it really is cool to know that at one time the Jedi were not binary. Well, it's
yeah,
just about the light and it's just about this and that's all there is. Like even in the Jedi at this time, there's a ton of nuance in how they each can interact with the Force. And it's almost like a minimal amount of dogma. It's not so much a religion as it is you try to live your life as close to this core set of beliefs as you can, wherever you're at. But there's not like a lot of dogmatic things that you have to deal with. And I really love that about the High Republic.
I feel like that's how I try and live my life, truly. Like it's like I try and be like a
Mm-hmm.
gray Jedi, essentially. Like Qui-Gon, like yeah, Qui-Gon would have been such a good way seeker. Oh my,
Oh, 100%. I
so
totally agree. Yes, I
yeah,
totally. I think if a Wayseeker had still existed as a thing, it
did it
would have
not?
been like, yeah, it would have completely changed the story for who Qui Gon ended up being.
When did they get rid of it? Did
We
we
don't know.
learn that? Oh, okay.
We haven't learned yet. There's several hundred years between
Right.
the end of the High Republic era, so to speak, and the current era. So we haven't learned yet.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like, because Grey Jedi technically, like the term Grey Jedi isn't actually canon. So
Right.
like maybe Wayseeker is just their way of saying Grey Jedi in a sense. Because it's like, you're kind
Yeah.
of an independent contractor, essentially.
Sort of, but I think anyone who's in the comments or still watching, let us know what your thoughts are. The way that's always kind of come across to me is that people tend to think of Grey Jedi as somebody who can balance both the light and the dark, so to speak, and they're like not become a dark side user so much, but like can use the light, but can also dabble in dark things because they can kind of play this line. And that's not how I always thought of Grey. I thought of the Grey Jedi when that concept is more of what you're describing, which is
Yeah.
you're not so much held to the idea of a dogmatic pursuit of just one thing. It's more of
It's
I just
Qui-Gon.
want to understand. I want to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
It's not about light or dark. It's about what is the living force. What is this thing? I just want to learn more. I think
Be a
It's
good
in
person.
the. I think it is in the. I only have the audio version of it. Padawan. Is it audio? No, I have it over here. The Padawan book, which was in Padawan, which is where Obi-Wan is a Padawan. He's still a Padawan. He goes off on his own adventure. Qui-Gon,
Yeah.
whatever happens, he goes off on his own thing and does this has this whole experience. Um, in it, he tells a story of being like in the temple and encountering something, reading someplace that he comes across the idea of a way seeker, and he's like, "What was this?" And doesn't really find much, but he comes across this idea. I think he even comes across Orla's name somewhere in the temple, like carved on a wall someplace. And he's like, "What is that?" And he wants to learn more, but then the story kind of continues. And it's like it's connecting more the Jedi we're used to with these. It's like, oh, it's almost like it just sort of fell out of fashion, or it just fell by the wayside, so to speak.
Or like Juniper said, I'm wondering if we'll see why they lose that in phase three. Maybe they're just setting up something to have some sort of event, or like maybe there's some sort of like
Yeah,
civil thing, not a civil war, because it wouldn't be a war within the
no,
Jedi, but a civil disagreement, I guess you could
almost like
call it.
a break, and like we need to let go of some things, or move on with other things. We need to ban certain things, become more dogmatic, almost going forward to help protect things or what have you. I mean, we can see that being set up now with. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but yeah, I love
Yeah,
Juniper.
it's
I
really
love
neat
when
if
she
I
shows
ever
up.
get it.
When her name shows up in Padawan, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Orla!" I love her so much. She is such an
See,
awesome
I read
character.
Padawan. I read Padawan, but I didn't know Orla yet, so I was like, "Oh, cool!
You're
Who's
like,
this cool person?" But now it's like so much cooler. Yeah.
right? Yeah, we actually get to meet. It's so cool that it's so rad to get to go back and like really meet all these characters. And as you start to think about these situations playing out, you're like, "Wow, how did this get to where we were in the Skywalker saga? Like, how did we go from this to that?"
Yeah. I want to see this live action, not necessarily like the Great Disaster, but I want to see the High Republic in live action. I just want to see the Jedi in their moment, like in when they're
Yes.
like actually thriving instead of just hiding and fighting and being sad. And
Yeah.
this isn't really cool. Like for someone who's obsessed with Jedi, I think this is just like this is my bread and butter right now.
Yeah, I hope. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but what I hope is, I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. I tried reading the first book, and it was too dialogue heavy, and I just couldn't get through it. But what I loved about the idea of like Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, these other big, the Dune saga, like what I love about these big long sagas is that, and I'm hoping, and this is probably a little bit different than what you're thinking, but I'm hoping that happens with the High Republic is that we get for a number of years just text based or comic book based content for a while to really build up like a repository of stories and threads so that when they do, I mean, they already have one that's going to come out in a couple of years called what the heck is it called?
Which
Shoot.
one? Skeleton Crew? That's not.
No, not Skeleton Crew. That takes place now. What is the other one?
It's Rogues. Yeah,
Acolyte.
that's
Acolyte.
the
So
costumes.
Acolyte takes place at the end of the High Republic. So the
Right, right.
Acolyte
I was
TV
gonna
show is
say.
at the end of the High Republic. We don't know anything about it other than I think there's one person who's been cast, but that's all we know. Um, but what I love about that is like I kind of want them to wait until they really get a lot of these stories
That's
out
true.
there and baked before they make a movie, or hopefully not a movie, hopefully a TV series. Like I think the TV series do a better job of like really letting us dig into these different characters, and we don't have to just shove it into one movie necessarily. Like
Well, yeah,
I love
and
movies, but I don't like that everything has to just be a movie.
well, and look what Clone Wars did for Anakin, you know? So
Right,
like it changed the way we view Vader even because we look at
100%.
Anakin, we look at Vader as like a sad, damaged Anakin and we feel sympathy for him. So it's like
Yep.
if we get those shows with these backstories, then we'll be able to build on it like that. That it's more in depth,
Yes.
and so for the actors even, it's something to base their character
Yeah.
on.
So like when we hear people talk, the actors who are in like the Wheel of Time series or in Game of Thrones, they're going back and reading these books that were published many years before. They, like you said, they can base what they do off of a wealth of information. And I'm really hoping that they take advantage of that so that any of these actors, any actors they get, can go back and say, "Wow, I really get a good sense from the audio dramas, the comic books, these print books of like, all right, I think I have a good idea who this character is as I'm going to try to play them."
But I think too, like also to the girls in the chat that were saying that costume. Yes, I literally every
Oh,
show that comes out, I screenshot so many costumes, and I'm like, I need to see High Republic costumes in real in live action. But I think what's really awesome about Star Wars right now is they're being really careful with who they cast, and they're casting
Yes.
people that care. And I'm not gonna say, I'm not spoiling. I don't know when we can spoil because like I'm so excited to talk about it, but I'll be talking about it tomorrow on I'm in Fate's channel. So we're doing like a little Mandalorian mid-season panel,
Nice.
but they're being really, really aware for like the very hardcore Star Wars fans of who they're casting. And I think it's, like Filoni and Favreau, like they're really taking this and being respectful about it and
Hmm.
making it badass. And I'm like really excited. So I think that they would do a really good job with High Republic.
Yeah.
This is the way. Yes.
Yes,
I,
absolutely.
it's,
I totally agree
it's
with you.
so good.
Totally agree.
So,
I'm thoroughly enjoying this. And the reason I was showing them a second ago, the books, is I just picked up my latest issues. I've got some books to read, but this is the latest issue number 6 of the High Republic, the mainline High Republic comic from Phase 2. And
so
just,
cool.
it's rad. I mean, and the way that they do this is that is the main run of the High Republic. Then you have Star Wars The High Republic Adventures, which is a side run, different artists, different look and feel, following different characters. Um, it happening roughly at the same time, but it's
Yeah.
really cool. It's really, really cool.
So
Like,
is that an illustrated version of like what's I have not comics is one thing I never like
uh,
hard.
you don't have to, but if you go back and get like they so for all of these they did trades in Phase 1, so you could go back and get the trades of, you not have to get the individual books. You could get, the trades of the first half and the second half, which I think for the most part follow the main runs of the High Republic. There might be trades of the other runs. There were 9 unique comic book runs in Phase 1.
Oh.
9. Yeah.
So you
So
can
there's
see you can see everything actually
and
like visually,
yes.
which is
So the
so
thing
cool
I love
for
about
us
comics, and
costume freaks.
exactly, the thing I love about comics is in Phase 1 especially, what you got was, oh, and sorry, to answer your question, Warhead. This run is Dark Horse. They're back to working with Dark Horse. They stopped for a long time, but they're back to working with Dark Horse. And then the main run is published by Marvel.
So
Um, anyway, the thing that I loved about it in the High Republic is because they had 9 different, I think it was 9 different book runs, different series happening. Some of them, like the High Republican Adventures, ran the entirety of Phase 1, whereas some of the others were short runs, like
yeah.
eight issues, and that's all it was. But the great part is every single run follows a different set of characters and what's going on with them in and around the stuff of Phase 1. And same thing for Phase 2. Like these 2 books, 2 different character sets happening in 2 completely different parts of the galaxy, 2 different planets. Yes,
Are
it's
they
generally
in
around the same time, but they're,
are they in these books though? Like so are they characters in the books and then you get to see like another little side
yes.
quest?
Well, sort of.
That's
Like in
sort
the other books back there. So like this character, Vimar, I think is his name. This character right here, I don't remember if he's mentioned in the Battle of Jeddah. But the things that are happening during the audiobook are exactly what's happening here. And there are characters in the comics that are mentioned in the
of
books, but you're almost seeing them from 2 different perspectives. So like if somebody walks into the square in Jeddah and there's a bunch of people getting really upset and someone's instigating it, in the Brent book or in this other book, you're seeing that happen from these people over here and they interact and deal with some stuff. And in this book, it's this other group of people over here. They're both watching the same thing happen. They're both Jedi there, but they're not
different.
interacting with one another.
Yeah.
They're dealing with their own things. And
I
so
love
it creates this whole other like way of seeing different perspectives on the same situation.
yeah.
Um, the thing that I love about comics, and I didn't realize it until I got back into it with Star Wars here a few years ago, is the way I've described it is your print books, it's 100% our imagination. So how you're viewing what Hafi and all these people look like is probably totally different than my mental image of all this stuff.
That's
And
100%.
yeah, and in movies and TV shows and blah blah blah, we're just given it. Like we don't have to. There's no work involved in our imagination. Someone tells us the story and they show us the story.
Yeah.
But with comics, you get the story and then you get enough panels in the book to give you an idea what's happening. But in between the panels isn't they don't fill in every single detail like a TV show would. So there's still enough left to your own imagination that you don't have to work super hard, but you do get to use your imagination while you're looking at it. So I
Yeah.
find it like this really neat sort of middle ground between a print book and live action or animated shows or whatever.
What is Juniper said, did you hear they're doing phase 1 omnibus? What's
Oh yeah,
omnibus?
it's basically like a big huge collection of all the comics.
Oh,
It's
like a
one big
like
print
a
of it's
novel.
one big print of everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
No,
awesome.
it's gonna be like it's almost like a graphic novel, but like one big bound. Here you go. There's all of
See,
phase one for all the comics.
that speaks my language because like me trying to track down all these different volumes, that's
Don't do
just
it. Yeah, yeah. I
but
think
I
you
would
can even
buy that
pre-order it.
for sure.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
actually mentioning it to me at my comic store here the other day. One of the guys was telling me he was, you know what? I just decided to hold off and buy any of them. He goes, I'm just going to buy the omnibus and just get it all at once.
Sorry,
Yeah,
my
thanks for
dog's
bringing that up too, Jennifer, because that's a really good idea for anyone who's like, I don't know how to hunt this stuff down. I don't have the time to keep up with it, or go. I don't want to go get a pull list at my comic shop. For comics, especially, if an omnibus is going to come out, or even if you want to deal with trade paperback, the trades they put out, just go get those. You don't need to follow and buy every individual. I love it, but it's not required to do, to enjoy these things.
yeah.
No, but we can find out. I have an app. There's an app out there. I think you, at
Sorry.
least on the iPhone, look up an app called Comic Geeks. If you look that up, it's an app that you can actually search all the upcoming comics for any particular thing you want. My
Really?
comic book shop just told me about this the other day. Just
That's
Comic
so cool.
Geeks.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
What time is it?
it is 8:12. Well, nine
All
twelve for your
right.
end, right? Well, 8:12.
Well, if no one has anything else to say,
Yeah,
I think that was a
that,
good one. It was
I
a
think we're
quick
having good.
one. Yeah.
Yes, no, this was
Um,
good. I like it. And there's been tons of conversation. Yeah, you're welcome, Warhead.
yeah.
And thank you everyone for joining and sticking with
Yeah.
us. The
We
lively
love you
discussion makes
guys.
us more fun.
Yeah, and we like appreciate you coming and checking in with
Hmm.
us. It's awesome. It makes us feel like we're like just reading to you. Just a little family story time. It's
Exactly.
awesome. But we're gonna start now. From now forward, it's always gonna be Thursdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So there's not gonna be hopefully any more changing of the dates. I'm gonna be on Star Cruiser May 4th, and so I don't know. We might have to Juniper might have to tag me in there for it. We'll see when it falls, but we'll
Hmm.
we'll figure it out and it'll
Yeah,
be
we'll figure it
great.
out.
Hi Jake, thanks. We're
Hey, Jake,
just missing it. I'm
you
sorry.
just missed it.
Missed it.
All
It'll
good.
be up on YouTube though.
Yeah, we'll have it up
Um,
later on.
you
Thank you all
teenagers
for
are so
joining.
great.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks guys. We love you and we will see you next Thursday at
Absolutely.
7 p.m. and one of us will upload this, or both of us will most likely upload this.
Yeah.
So if you missed anything, you can watch it on our YouTube channels, which are linked in mine and going to be linked in his because he's going to do that, and that's
I
going
do
to be
have it. I
okay.
have it go to
Good.
what's it called beacons.ai. So like a
Yeah,
what's the one
beacons.
called like a link tree. Yeah, like a link tree.
Yeah,
It's in that. Yeah, I have it in.
awesome. Cool. Thanks so much, guys. We love you. We appreciate you. Come back, and we will see you soon.
Bye everyone. Have a good one. See ya.
Bye.